Afternoon, everybody. I'd like to welcome you all here this afternoon to the draft transportation and parking bylaw hearing and deliberations. I'd like to welcome councillors, submitters and members of the public. The reason for is to hear submissions first up. The submitters will come forward and give their submission, and the submissions, the councillors will then have a chance to ask them any questions and points of clarification, and then we'll move on from there to the rest of the process. So to start with, I'd like to welcome Donna Fable from the Ashburton Citizens Association to do her submission. It's on page 11 to 20 of the submissions, actual submissions form.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wilson, or should I say Councillor Wilson Jr. So I will take the submission that you have in front of you as read. The Ashburton Citizens Association thank Council for the opportunity to submit and present. The first question you had in your consultation document was, do you agree with the changes to restrictions to heavy vehicle movements, one-way roads and turning restrictions? And I gave a fairly lengthy answer because the Ashburton Citizens Association agreed with some of the changes, and I went through in detail which ones we agreed with. Interesting, in preparing the submission, as with previous ones, it does heighten your awareness on that particular issue. So last year I submitted on the airport, and now I find myself waking up very alert at airplanes flying over early in the morning. Then we had the speed limits, and so we're watching out for speeding vehicles. This one, I didn't realise quite how my desk faces the intersection of Victoria, Wills and Cass until I'd done the submission. And in the time since preparing the submission on the 14th of May, I've witnessed an average of probably 20 heavy vehicles a day coming down a road, which according to our council's consultation document, that is currently a prohibited route. The other thing I'd like to talk about is parking on footpaths. You'll see in Appendix C, I included frequently asked questions from the Wellington City Council, which was written in 2021. And it states in that document that parking on footpaths is and has been for 17 years an offence. Well, of course, that was written in 2021, and we're now 2023, so we're approaching 20 years that it has been an offence. On the very day that I wrote this submission, on the 14th of May, because there's nothing like leaving it till the last minute, I reported 4 vehicles in 3 locations via SnapSend Solve for parking on footpaths. As at last night, just 1 of those 4 vehicles has been removed from the footpath. The others are leaving, doing their daily business, coming back and parking on the footpath again. The day after preparing the submission at approximately 1:30, David and I were incredulous to see a heavy vehicle travel east on Will Street between East and Victoria, which is not permitted under the bylaw. There are several traffic calming features on Wills Victoria intersection, so rather than abide the road rules and drive on the left, the driver turned on the right hand side of the road, took a sharp right back up Victoria and then left into Cass, at which point he loudly honked his horn because the footpath was occupied by diners at the Triangle Espresso Cafe. There were a number of pedestrian crossings in that vicinity, but even more occasions, probably 80% of the time, people do not walk on the pedestrian crossing. They actually meander across the road at any point that they like. So even this morning, I witnessed no one on the pedestrian crossing, 1 pedestrian walking across the road about 10 metres south of the crossing, and a second pedestrian walking across the road about 20 metres south. So unsure if vehicles in that location, I think that particular vehicle was heading towards some construction that's going on in this site. In recent days, I've counted 20 vehicles a day, as I mentioned. So, in regards to key change 4 in your consultation document, I was intrigued when I reported this incident to council that I be supplied a map from RAM where heavy vehicles are currently allowed to go. Now, as you look at the green, those are permitted routes for heavy vehicles. Will Street from east to Cass currently is under consultation. So it surprised me that it is approved on the RAM when it's still out there for consultation. Peter Street, which I've submitted to say vehicles come down Will Street, they need to go south to north or north to south somewhere, why don't we use Cass and then go back up Peter, is already there as an approved route. And yet in council's document, your register of resolutions, Peter Street is not mentioned. So I'm curious as to how a route gets into your RAM when it hasn't been resolved by council. So forgive me as I look at key change 4 where it says decision by resolution that council want to be clearer about the process required to make changes to traffic restrictions. I would simplistically think that the road layout is designed, considered by the developer and agencies. The layout and use and bylaw changes are considered and consulted upon. The resolution from council is then included into a register of resolutions, and then the RAM is not updated. The RAM is updated, not the other way around. Regarding key change 2, aligning the bylaw with current practices, I find it interesting and wonder what a reasonable person would conclude. I think that the current practices should comply with the bylaw, not that the bylaw be amended to fit the current practices. So recently, Ashburton District Council adopted speed limits of 30 kilometres around schools. Is the Ashburton District Council suggesting that if drivers do not comply with those rules, they may be increased to align the bylaw with the current practices in future? I would hope it would be the other way round. And the next thing I have is Waka Kotahi, open consultation this week on bilingual road signs. They already have a certain amount of bilingual language on some of their signs. Other departments do as well. And the Ashburton Citizens Association requests that Ashburton District Council submit and support the proposed signs and consider local bilingual signs where appropriate. Thank you very much for your time, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Donna, for a very well thought out and good submission, and we've certainly probably all gained some insight into things from that. My question relates, and also just as an aside, I saw on Fair Go the parking on the footpath issue, and that might be something that we remind officers about, to just, if you're snap sending solving, just have a look at that, because I understand that not only does it block footpaths for disabled and the elderly and everybody, but also weakens the integrity of the footpath, so ends up costing ratepayers more, if that's, I think. But anyway, my question relates to air braking, Donna. Do you have a view on air braking in the town? Do you hear that from your home, or?
So firstly, we're seldom home.
Yeah.
When we are home, it tends to be late at night, and I don't hear a lot of air braking. In fact, there was a major crash just 2 doors down from our house and didn't hear a thing.
You're lucky, you're a good sleeper.
Yeah, so no, I don't have an opinion on air braking.
Mm-hmm. Some submitters have commented on air braking, and I'm just interested in your view on that. Thank you.
Councillor Hooper.
Thank you. Hi, Donna. I agree with you about the footpath parking, and I also watched that bit on the news and on Fair Go. And I think our fines and penalties need to be tougher, so it is more of a deterrent in New Zealand. I think in Australia they're in the thousands of dollars of court, whereas we are maybe a $50 fine or something like that.
Councillor Hooper, I'm sorry, I don't have the answer on that, but what I can tell you anecdotally from one of the vehicles that I've reported, it has been parked in the vicinity of, and I understand why it's doing it. It's a big vehicle, it's parked on Mokanui Road, there's a traffic calming island just near it, so to get off the road and reduce the risk of damage to the vehicle, it's parking on the footpath. However, I've also walked that route as school children are either going to Hampstead School or to the intermediate or college, and I've seen mobility scooters and wheelchairs trying to get past. I've seen that vehicle there so often that the water meter beneath the footpath exactly in the vicinity that the vehicle is parking has then burst and been replaced as well. So to Councillor Cameron's points, I don't know that the footpath is actually made to take the weight of vehicles. That wasn't the initial intention. And yet just around the road on Chalmers Avenue there would be space to hide behind a traffic island and the vehicle would be safer. Just from a convenience perspective, and to my point about people not using the pedestrian crossing, we seem to have adopted this habit of taking the shortest route in the path of least resistance. So to have the vehicle right by the gate is far easier for the individual as opposed to the inconvenience of a 20-metre walk.
Any more questions from anybody? Thank you, Donna. I now call Dame Linda Top forward. Does she like to come forward and submit? Thank you. Sorry.
Thanks for the time that you're offering. We're all good.
So it's page 42 and 43, just for everybody.
Thanks very much for giving us this time to talk to you about the bylaw changes and things that are being put in place here. I know there are 4 key issues, and my submission relates to the key change 2, which is about metered parking. I know that Liz and Rob, our Western Ward representatives, are here, and I'm not sure whether they're aware of this or not, but there's been a lot of talk in Methven about some restricted parking being put in place, and I have been approached by some of the businesses in Methven to put forward a submission today about this. And the general consensus, it seems, is that Methven does not ever want to have metered parking. We're a small rural community, we're also a tourist community, and we feel that metered parking would be a huge disadvantage to the community and to the town. And also it means that a lot of businesses would be affected by it. If you restrict time, then that means less time in cafes, bars, massage places, shopping, all that kind of stuff. We need to welcome people into Methven. And if we had metered parking, that would be a terrible thing to happen to a beautiful small town like Methven. And the other option we're thinking of is that maybe we need to think about some changes in Ashburton. If you want to bring more people into Ashburton, how about some free days of parking? Because the idea for Ashburton is you're saying you're a go-ahead place and you are going to be asking for submissions later on about how to improve Canterbury and how to get more people in. If you want more people to come into the area, then the less you charge them, the more they'll want to come. So I'm not going to take up too much more of your time, but we're just letting you know that the people of Methven are opposed to any kind of metered parking, and the businesses are extremely worried about the idea of it. And the wording on the draft says that the council would like to retain this bylaw because they want to act more quickly. And that scares me. A council that wants to act more quickly, you need to think about what you're doing slowly and whether it will affect the community that you are going to make a decision about. So just a reminder that Methven knows that there are changes to the bylaws, and I know that there are 4 options, and there are better people, suited to understand those other 3. But let's keep Methven out of your plan about metered parking, because we want our place to be beautiful. We want it to be a welcoming, and any kind of metered parking would be a catastrophe to Methven. So thanks for your time, and I hope you consider this maybe on an emotional level, not so much as a technical level, as we move forward into the future, because Canterbury could be one of the greatest tourist attractions in this country. And we need to make sure that everybody is happy and everybody wants to come. And if you have to pay to park your car, that's going to piss people off. So thanks for your time, and I hope you consider all these things. I'd like to thank Donna for all her work too. She was technically brilliant, as opposed to me. I'd like to be emotionally fantastic. So I'll leave it over to you to make some great decisions about these new bylaws, and if you could add maybe a little clause in the bottom that no metered parking will ever be put in to Methven. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll go to questions now. Mayor Brown.
Thanks, Dame Linda, for presenting your submission today. Just thinking about free parking. You talked about free parking in Ashburton and in Methven. As I understand it, we don't charge for parking now. All parking in the whole district is free, but it is time restricted.
Yes, metered. It's metered. So in the end, if you go over that restriction, you have to pay for it.
Pay a fine.
Yeah.
And let's look at the time restricted parking, and it's there for a reason. So if someone comes outside a shop, wants to shop, they get so much time to park and do their shopping, whatever, whether it be 10 minutes up to 2 hours or whatever. And that ensures that the parks keep revolving over, so people can't park there all day, every day, and do whatever. So it's fair to everyone, do you think, by having it restricted, you can park for a certain amount of time, then you must move on, let someone else come and have their turn free?
I understand that there is restricted parking, and in some areas that needs to be put in place. There's already restricted parking in Methven, 60 minutes. Well, 60 minutes doesn't cut the mustard. It's too short. If you go for a massage in Methven, you're there for longer than 60 minutes. So you've got to park your car away from that business, and then walk to it, and then get your massage, and then walk back to your car. Well, when you've got a car park right outside that business, that doesn't cut the mustard. A metered parking has to allow for what that business offers, and 60 minutes doesn't cut the mustard on something like that. Even in our cafe in Methven, we have people come in for lunch, for business meetings, and they're there for over an hour at our cafe. So the problem is that, yes, I know there's restricted parking, but a lot of people get fined because the meeting went on for another 5 minutes, or the massage took longer, or you fell asleep in the massage and the massage lady let you sleep for an extra 5 minutes. You know, we need to understand how is that restricted parking affecting businesses in that particular area. And I know that CBD has, free parking or restricted parking, and you have to pay a fine. I mean, I've paid probably 4 or 5 fines as I've come into to Ashburton because my business went on longer. And so, you know, you get a fine. And yes, there are times when you know, have to, you know, get your revenue for your council, but this is not one of them. Fines is just, you know, it's a pain in the bum for people, little fines from councils about parking for a few minutes more. Most people you'll find are pretty good. You know, most people are busy. They don't want to stay parked for too long. They want to move on, you know. They're busy people, got time to, you know, sit around for days and days and days in car parks. There may be some owners of businesses who may be in the parking business of, you know, taking up that space. But yeah, I mean, I've had a fine for $12, and I'm thinking, how much did it cost this council to get my $12 by having metered parking? And having somebody come along with their little ticket and put it on. You have to pay their wages, you have to go through the process at the council for $12. How much did it cost to get my $12? It just seems kind of weird in some ways that and it's not about, okay, you can pay for what you want to park for. The fact that it's a fine, that's disrespectful to the people who live in this community, that we're going to fine you because you were too long doing your business.
Do you know of many of the businesses told you of any fines that have been handed out in Methven itself?
What's that?
Do you know of many businesses that have had fines?
No, I'm not privy to that, I'm afraid. That's council business.
Oh, yeah. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor McMillan.
Thank you. Hi, Linda. Probably at the same time as we went out for consultation, there was a bit of, there was an item on the Methven Community Board agenda about the restriction for the Methven Mall, and I understand there was a town meeting, or there was some businesses that held a meeting a couple of weeks ago. I wasn't able to attend, but I know the Methven Community Board members went. Did you go to that, and was there any feedback from that?
No, I wasn't available for that either. I was away in Auckland at that time. But I did speak to some of the people who were in that area, in the mall, in the business sector, and they're just worried about the fact that it could impact on their business. By having a restricted parking already, you know, there's a sign that says restricted parking, but we don't want meters. This is what this bylaw is about. That meters would be put in place, and how would those meters be put in? Would they be digital at the end of the road? So you've got to get out of your car and walk down and put your number plate in, or are they going to be meters? Are they going to dig holes in the pavement and put meters in again? I mean, it seems archaic to go backwards in metered parking.
Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Dame Linda. Just a quick question. I totally support your stance on metered parking too. But do you have a view on scooters? Electric scooters are becoming more and more prevalent now. Do you have a view on where scooters should be, and you know, in the district where they should be allowed to?
You mean the e-scooters?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It depends who's riding them. If you're over 85, you should be allowed to go anywhere you want.
Yeah, generally it's not those.
Whether you're on an upright scooter or a four-wheel scooter or whatever, okay?
Yep.
I think, you know, the mobility scooters, they should be allowed to go pretty much wherever they want, as long as it's safe for everybody. Mm-hmm. I believe that, you know, they should be able to park outside shops if they can, you know, on the side of the shop area. That would be great. I haven't seen too many e-scooters in the area, you know, in Ashburton. I don't think there's an e-scooter app you can get in Ashburton, but people who have their own personal scooters, it's just about courtesy. You know, don't leave them in the middle of the pavement, so people have to go around them. If you're worried about scooters, do we need to put in some sort of area where you can park a scooter? Or do they get parked on the pavement? I mean, that's a council issue, that's why, you're looking at these bylaws. But we're just saying that metered parking in small towns in the Western Ward, I mean, at the way you're looking at this thing where it says we can act quickly, does that mean that at some point Methven, Mount Somers and Mayfield, which are the urban areas of the Western Ward, is there any possibility that this council is thinking of putting metered parking in those areas? And we are just letting you know that all those little towns will be putting up a massive fight if this council thinks about moving metered parking into those areas.
Thank you. Councillor Hooper.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Hi, Dame Linda. Good to see you. I hear what you're saying about the time restricted in Methven and in town, but I just wanted to run a scenario past you because I think it's a bit of a juggling act, and I'm not sure if free parking all day is the answer or not. I'm just worried about somebody maybe going to the pub and parking their car outside your cafe for the day while they're there.
Yeah.
That would be a bit upsetting to you.
Well, probably not, because I'd probably be at the pub with them.
But you see what I mean?
My cafe, our cafe is from 8 till 3. So parking for the hotel would not impede on our...
Okay, so they're going somewhere else, but they leave their car outside your cafe for the whole day, stopping somebody from, and if all the other car parks are, taken up at a certain time, when somebody drives past, they're thinking, I'll go in and see Linda and get a sausage roll. It might have been Chris Hipkins, for example, and can't get there because somebody's parked there all day, then that's going to upset you, right? I'm just running that scenario, whether it's juggling at, you see what I mean, whether it's 1 hour, 2 hour, or is it free all day? So
I understand what you're saying about somebody parking somewhere every day on the same park constantly, and that's probably either a worker or somebody who owns a thing, and that it comes down to courtesy. We have to say, and I think that's what happened in the meeting at the community board in Methven. Everybody is saying, let's be more aware of, people's, parking. Let's make sure that you don't take up a huge amount of parking all day long in some area. We're a little lucky because we have a car park behind our building, and we could put a restriction on that. The cafe owns that parking. We could say this is for cafe customers only, but we choose not to because we think every person who comes into Methven is important and they should be able to find a park. We're not in the position really in Methven where we're struggling to find parks at this point. In the wintertime, we get a lot more parking, but most people park in their accommodation areas or on the bus up to the ski field, or they're up to the hot pools, which has already got parking. We don't really have that problem in such ways, but if you started putting metered parking into the CBD of Methven, then what will happen is that people will start to park out further, and then you'll be parking in front of somebody's house. So, residential parking is important for people who live outside the CBD. But if you start metering it, that will affect people's mindset. I'm not going to park there because I'll get a ticket. And we don't want that. That's what I'm saying. This is the idea, is that Methven does not want that mentality to come into our little town. That, that there's all these rules and you're going to get a fine if you don't abide by them.
yeah, I agree. I was just trying to see if there was some happy ground in between the two, really. But yeah, no, that's all good. Thank you.
No worries.
Thank you. Councillor Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sympathetic to your calls on parking meters in a previous life, obviously in retail here in town. We debated parking meters with the council, and when they upgraded the town centre, they did away with the meters. They put in sensors, but an interesting point
Can
that
you
came
just
out.
put your mic up a little bit? It's hard to hear, man. Is it?
Sorry. An interesting thing came out with when they put sensors in. An interesting thing came out of that is that the average stop or stay in a park, each parking meter was about 13 minutes. So the turnover in town here told me that the majority of people do not stay more than an hour in our parking meters in town, which is quite an interesting stat. So we do have 2 hour parking on West Street. But I think we do need a time limit because, we need to be able to move people on, otherwise you're going to have people parking there all day. So I think we do need a time restriction to be imposed so that the parking thing isn't abused.
I understand that Ashburton has more, parking, problems in the sense of Methven, but 1 hour is a really, it's not enough time for people to get the job done because, now that there's a one-way system too, it takes, extra time to find a park because you can't go down that street, you've got to go further up and come round and go back and back that way. So it takes longer to find a park, and because of the beautification of Ashburton, there are less car parks down those roads because there's more garden and more seats and things for people to sit on. So it makes it difficult because, if you're going to provide a shopping centre and a business centre in town, then you have to provide parking. So if you take parking away, then it makes it harder for people to find a park. And also, if you only allow them 1 hour and they have to park 2 streets over and walk to their business meeting and then have their business meeting, by the time they've got back, their 1 hour is up. 1 hour is not a lot of time to get your jobs done. Farmers, and people out in the Western Ward and the Eastern Ward and outside of Ashburton, they come into town. They might have 4 or 5 jobs to do in one day. They're not going to come into Ashburton every day and do one job there and one job there. They might have quite a few things that they have to do. So if you look at that point of view of that people are coming into Ashburton to do their business, you're giving them 1 hour to park their car. And it's just not enough anymore. It's not enough time. And we're saying we don't want that to ever happen in Methven. We want people to have all the time in the world to come to Methven. And we also want people to understand that there's a courtesy. People will need to be kind again about parking. And maybe the council needs to, think about maybe advertising that a little more. Just thinking that you can park here and get your business done, but please be aware that there are other people waiting to park to get their business done, If we could all work in together, that would be really good. But I do know there are times when there has to be time restrictions, okay? But I'm just saying 1 hour is not enough anymore.
Thank you. I will go to Councillor Lovett.
Okay, I'll come back to Methven, same with the Western Ward. And you're saying the hour's not long enough, and you've got people having massages and doing hairdressing, and we know an hour's not enough. What would you like to see? Would you like to see us put those instead of an hour 20 or an hour 80 to give people a chance to have their massage and get out again if we want to keep the turnover of vehicles within
in that particular area in the mall that I drove down there this morning, went down there twice, and it was pretty chocker because people are pulling into the supermarkets, they're going to the laundry, they've got the hairdressers there, they've got the chemist at the end of the mall, so people are coming and going all the time. But I mean, I don't want to speak totally on behalf of the businesses and the people of Methven, but I am here to try and get this idea that we don't want metered parking, but restriction times need to be longer. So at least 2 hours, and possibly 3. If you're in that area doing something that you need to be doing. But if you're not, if you're parking your car and you're in and out, that's fine. But at least 2 hours so that those businesses are not affected by the time restriction, and the people who are parking there are not thinking in the back of their mind, I'm going to get a fine.
Okay, no, that's good. But at least you've given us some times if we feel we need to change. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Councillor Lovett. Councillor Mackle.
Yeah, g'day, Linda. I was just pretty much what Hoots was saying before was part of my question. You're possibly working on the assumption that people are generally courteous all the time. Unfortunately, it's not the world we live in. There are uncourteous people about. So hence the reason of time limits on parking. If, say, you were going for a massage and you had one client in there and you're on a busy street and you had a cafe on that street, you got one client going in for a massage, 10 to 20 people going into a cafe, and you've got a 2-hour limit on that guy sitting in your massage. Well, the cafe is trying to get turnover through his business. It doesn't really stack up in a high volume area. What'd you say?
Well, there's no cafes in the mall, Rob.
Yeah, but that is a busy street. Very
Yeah,
busy
but
street. And a lot of cars.
your
and-
scenario
Excuse me.
does not exist in that street.
Yeah, excuse me, Councillor Mackle, we just aim for just questions, it's not
Sorry.
debate, yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
What you,
I disagree that it is a very busy street, that mall street. Would you not agree?
the mall in Methven you're talking about?
Yes, the mall
Yes,
street.
I just said that there's a lot of people that come and go there because there are a lot of businesses in there, okay? But if you're going to the supermarket, you're usually in and out, and most people are in and out of the supermarket, okay? They might need to do a big shop, we don't know. When anybody walks into those shops, we do not know what their business is in some sense, okay? They might be just rushing in to go out, get a pie and a drink, or they might be doing their weekly shop in that supermarket. If you're going to the massage place, you know that you're going to need more than an hour, because that's what you buy an hour's massage. So at some point, your car will be there longer than that hour, okay, because you're going to be having a massage for an hour. If you're at the laundry, depend on whether you're a business or whether you're a private. You know, you might have come off the Tiara Trail, that's probably going to take 3.5 hours to do your washing. Okay, if there's somebody who's coming in to do the towels for the cafe or the tea towels for a cafe, they might take a little longer. They're going to have more bulk. So what I'm saying is that yes, everybody has their different ideas, but we have to allow the people to do that. If they're driving their vehicle to that, we have to allow them, give them that time. Otherwise, there's always that in the back of the mind that I'm going to be fined by the Ashburton Council. Do you want that in people's minds when they pull into the car park in Methven? No, we don't want that. We don't want that as a small town. And so what I'm saying is give people the time to do their business, and let's also ask people to be courteous. Once they're finished, move on and go park somewhere else or do your business somewhere else closer to that particular business. But 1 hour is not enough in those situations. So I disagree, Rob, with you. I think, yes, it's very busy, but we need to allow people to do what they need to do in Methven, okay? Because we don't want that, you know, that idea that, well, shit, I've got to go like the maniac because I've got to, you know, I've got to rush back to the parking meter. That would be a terrible thing in Methven.
If that was your thought, and
Councillor Mackle, yeah, we just keep them to questions, that's all, yep. Yep,
it was a question.
yep, that's good.
Yeah. If that's the thought, those businesses don't own those car parks outside their premises. Is that a fact?
I think they belong to the council,
Yes.
Rob.
They don't own,
Yeah.
so the businesses don't own them. So if you were going in for a massage, would you not be courteous and park further down the street away from that street? So other businesses could use those car parks for short times.
I think perhaps the submitter's answered the questions to, you know, what she wants to put forward to us. Would you have anything else you'd like to add to the, you know, about the time of parking and that sort of thing? Or?
Yeah. When was the last time you drove down that mall, Rob?
possibly a couple of weeks ago.
Okay, he's getting into debate. We can't have debate.
What
so-
I'm saying is here that I think the Western Ward, my idea of this submission was that the Western Ward people want to keep Methven as a place that does not have metered parking. That is the submission, okay?
Yep.
And I would expect our representatives from the Western Ward to support the people of the Western Ward. And at the moment, the feeling is we do not want metered parking in Methven, and it would be great if we had a little more time for those people to go to the businesses that they want to, at least 2 hours. Thank you.
Yep. No, thank you very much. I'd like to congratulate both submitters on good, concise, got their point across very well. And thank you for coming in. You're quite welcome to stay and listen to the rest of the proceedings. Thank you very much. We'll now move to the written submissions. And if we go to the...
You know what it is. Thank you.
Good thing. Okay, we'll move to the summary of feedback from everything, and we'll go through it the same page by page. And it'd be good if, when we talk of submissions, if there's the map available so we can see where we're talking about, because street names can go into a blur when you get lots of them together. Okay, so we'll go to the first page. Total of 17 submissions received, 16 on time, 2 heard, and we've heard the 2 this morning. Changes to restrictions. Do you agree or disagree with them? Any comments on that? Councillor McMillan?
Sorry, probably just a comment, but is it usual to have sort of 35% answer don't know or no answer? It seems like quite a high percentage for this question. Were we getting submissions that weren't sort of relevant, perhaps in Swahili?
I believe we only had one submitter who submitted in Swahili. It's my first experience of that particular language in a council submission, but there's always something new to find in local government. I think the reason we've got a reasonably high proportion of no answer or don't know is may simply be that some people had a view that they liked some of the things and they didn't like some of the other things, and so they opted for that answer instead of perhaps agreeing with some of the changes. Sometimes when you design a consultation document, you put the questions in, sometimes the questions prove to be really right on the nail and they give you really good feedback, and sometimes your question just misses the mark, and I think this question just missed the mark.
Thank you. We'll move now to the submitters. We have 2 anonymous, effectively anonymous 3 it says. Any questions on that one? Anonymous 4, which is in Swahili, which is very interesting. Good diverse community. Then we have Ashburton Citizens Association, Donna Faber, which she did verbally this morning. Councillor Cameron.
This may not be the time to bring it up, I always get confused, but Donna talked about the maps where we were proposing heavy traffic bypasses, but we'd already had them in the document as heavy traffic allowed. Have we corrected that, or does that offer, when you read the document, she was saying that some were already, it looked like they'd already been heavy traffic. Have you read the submissions? Yeah.
The information in RAM is for our asset database, so it's not the bylaw, and it's not information from the bylaw. So there's been some roads that have been shown as heavy vehicle routes when they shouldn't have been shown like that. And I agree with what Donna Fable said. What's in RAM should be after the consultation and match the bylaw. The information in the bylaw is the schedules that are supplied and the maps that are supplied, not what RAM. That was information that was supplied after for another query that got submitted to us via RAM.
Okay.
So we'll be correcting that. Yeah.
This is totally not on topic, but that will be corrected post this discussion.
Yes.
Thank you.
it will, yeah.
Okay. Keep moving through Councillor Fable's one. Oh, sorry, Councillor Fable, crikey. Donna Fable's one, sorry.
No.
Yes. Councillor Lovett.
Peter Street, she was talking about that, and we've got some businesses there which has heavy trucks going into that, because that's not on our list. Will we be bringing that one into this bylaw? Peter Street at the back, the countdown in Newman's. I know Newman's got one coming up, they talk about it too. So we'll deal with that, bring it in.
Yes, it should be there as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Tal.
And one more question with your
Councillor
indulgence,
Cameron.
Mr Chair. The business of the footpath thing, people do snap seamed solves, and the footpath parking will be alluded to, or will there be extra vigilance around the foot, because it's obviously not in the bylaw, except to say you can't do it, but people do. So are we going to have some, when will we discuss approaches to deal with that?
To pass on to Rick, it's an enforcement issue, so
Thank you. Through the chair, we have a this is a problem. Sorry? Okay.
He's privileged to fix it.
It's just they can't hear you through the live feed.
Okay. Thank you. Through the chair, this is a problem district-wide and also includes caravans, heavy vehicles, trailers and the like. So not just down to cars. We have a number under investigation at the moment. A number of those have already had infringements served. It's a statutory fine of $60. It's inconsiderate parking. We can get them on parking on the footpath, but it tends to be the quickest way of dealing with it is inconsiderate parking, because it can be blocking the footpath as equally as opposed to damaging the footpath as well. So, like I say, there is a number of these. It is an issue, but it's district-wide, not just CBD.
So the council is aware of that and dealing with that?
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you. We'll move on to the submission from Lynn Bridge. Any comments on that one?
What page are you on?
Page 9, top of page 9. Councillor Lovett.
Just talking about loading zones, how many do we have right in the middle of town? Is it just the ones, and it's really the one by Briscoe's, or on the street, or how many others is there loading zones?
yeah, there's one outside Eastfield Health and Eastfield Pharmacy as well. But there aren't very many.
Through you, Mr Chair, that was deliberate to a large extent when the CBD was redesigned, because they were trying to discourage heavy vehicles from actually entering the CBD in the first place.
Councillor Mayor Brown, sorry.
You're just thinking about the loading zone outside Briscoe's, which Briscoe's is no longer there. That was put in for Briscoe's at Briscoe's request. Should that now be readdressed?
Yes, it should be, yeah. Depending on the use of the building, I guess, and whether they still need one or not. So.
It's a big mall area in there, so I think it needs to be readdressed. Yeah.
Thank you. Go on to the next one, Mr. HS Core. Any? I do note that they mentioned ban jack brakes, which I mean air brakes in the town. Councillor McMillan? No. Okay, next one is the New Zealand Transporting New Zealand Inc. Councillor Cameron?
Where is the air brake comment, please?
On top of page number 10.
Oh, okay, I haven't gone far enough. Thank you.
Any on the New Zealand? Councillor Mayor Brown?
Just on the roads that can't take heavy vehicles, you're not allowed to have them go down them as of right. But you can go down them if you're delivering goods or services. You can take a heavy vehicle down a prohibited heavy route, I understand. Is that for delivering goods or services?
Yeah, that's correct. It's to stop the use of urban streets or in CBD as a route to drive through. But to do deliveries, they still have to do that. So yeah.
Yep.
Okay, move to Councillor McMillan.
Sorry, thank you. So just on that last point there, Forest Drive and Barker's Road and also Tarboddens Road to be prohibited. So Barker's Road and Forest Drive are obviously sort of ways for heavy vehicles to get in and out of Methven. So I'm guessing, how do you get that across if it does become prohibited? Because it's been used for years and years, and obviously Forest Drive is where people are concerned about the air braking, and it is flat, and I don't know why they would be doing that.
I think, Richard may correct me if I'm wrong, but that is actually lifting a prohibition to actually park on those streets because of the change in them. So it relates to where heavy vehicles can be parked overnight, and they used to be permitted there. And we're changing it because the development that's gone on. It's not appropriate to do it anymore.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Hooper.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Your mind's on Rob McAleese as well. He's saying, yes, please, can we ban air brakes in the township of Methven? Can we actually do that? And is it, now that we're getting feedback like this, time that we should relook at maybe some signage deterring?
As resolved at council meeting last month, we're working with Whakaatahi to work with the industry. So it's an agenda item with the next meeting that Whakaatahi have with the industry, and I've asked to attend and make sure it's on the agenda. So it'll be discussed there as a first instance to work with the operators rather than actually putting up signs. So, yeah. And that's not as Ashburton, that'll be for all towns, including Methven. Yeah.
Move to Edith Smith.
Oh, just before you go to Edith,
Sorry, Councillor.
with us banning heavy vehicles parked up overnight on some of these roads, because a lot of these are owner-drivers, where else do they park them? Like in Tynwald, they used to park them up in the sale yards, and now that's all being developed. They've been kicked out of there. And you're starting to see now trailers parked up on the sides of roads. Is it time as a council we start looking at perhaps road reserves or somewhere people can park up vehicles even if it's for a rest? Because it's going to become more of an issue, because we're sort of sitting in the middle of the South Island and people are, there's trucks going and coming and going all the time. And private operators cannot go and park in someone else's yard because that's in competition to businesses. And it is talked about in some of these submissions, we're stopping them parking. So do we have to look in the future where else they can park up safely?
Any comments? No.
I guess that's a consideration for council if you wish to do that, but it's not something we have at the moment. We don't want them parking in urban areas either, outside people's houses. So working with other operators and parking their yards would seem to be the way to go. It's a common problem. It used to be the same issue around Rolleston as well, as it is here in other places. It's not an easy one to fix, but that is their business, so it's for them to actually work out spaces. I don't think council would be in a position to provide parking spaces for heavy vehicles. off-road or on-road. But you can decide otherwise.
Mayor Brown?
Yeah, I'm not sure how big a problem it is, but I know truck drivers, they go from one end of the country to the other and they stop, and they got to stop when their hours are up, and they stop and they generally sleep, and I see them on East Street, they stop at the motels. They need somewhere to park their truck, and on the side of the road seems to be a perfect place to park it, outside the motel while they're sleeping and carry on next day. They won't have a yard in this district, but I don't think it's a huge problem that we need to address, I don't think.
I've got a question on the Timble corridor with the upgrades to the of the Legmore corner, Malcolm Street. I've got the street is going to have bumps and put in it. Does that affect the changing of Tarbottons Road and the changing of that, for transport to get up Hollands Road, because there's farms up Hollands Road and access to those farms?
I don't believe so. They can still get access there. So.
Yeah. So Malcolm's Road is not a. It's not on the is it on the transport?
But they can still use Tarbottons Road as a route, but not to park. Yeah. Yeah. It's there are different schedules that double up, so it can be a wee bit confusing to actually look at them unless you're looking at maps. So unless they're both looked at the same time, I think that's the idea of having the routes mapped rather than actually in the schedules. It should be easier to see. Yeah.
Any more questions on those first ones? Damelin to Tops last, but we've been through that one. Okay, move to changes to align the bylaws with current practices and changes in the transport environment. Councillor Lovett.
We're just going back to Jane. Linda's one, the one-hour parking up there in Methven, can we extend that a little bit longer in some places for those that do these therapies?
Just through you, Mr. Chairman, after you've clarified anything about these submissions and before you enter deliberations, Jane's going to give a bit of an update, because I think there's been some things said about Methven parking that aren't necessarily always true on the ground. So we're going to give that opportunity to Jane before you go into deliberations.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll move up page 12. The changes to the current practices and changes in the transport environment. Anonymous 4, again, Ashburton Citizens Association. Going through. Lynn Bridge. Newman's Tyres. Edith Smith and Dame Linda Top. Okay. 1.4 other changes. Do you have any other changes that we'd like to suggest? Ashburton Citizens Association, HS Core, Ed Eason, Jane Grace, Edith Smith, and any other comments general? Anonymous 2, Ashburton Citizens Association, Lynn Bridge, Councillor Cameron.
Just a clarification, I'm talking about, if I can go through the chair to Jane, talking about e-scooters, or is it, might not be your department. In here, in this anonymous 2, e-scooters are not allowed to be ridden in designated cycle lanes. Is that indeed the case? So we've got cycle lanes, so there's a, can I just, I'm just going to do generally chew the fat. Put your light on, Richard. People go fast on these e-scooters, and nobody we know,
We're not
looking at
deliberating.
anybody, but people go fast on these e-scooters.
Councillor Cameron, we're not deliberating.
No, I was going to just allow, I was going to get to a question.
Okay.
That is indeed the case. So in Ashburton, you either drive them on the road or drive them on the footpath. Is that correct? Yeah, e-scooter.
Yeah.
Is that the deal?
That is the deal. You can ride them on the footpath. you can ride them on the road. The only place you cannot ride an e-scooter is a designated cycle lane, and a designated cycle lane is classified as a special vehicle lane and needs to be established under a local bylaw. So while we do have parts of some of our roads painted, road marked for cycles, they are not, strictly speaking, designated cycle lanes.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
So you may well see an e-scooter in one of those, but they're not breaking the law.
I'm going to talk about those then in deliberations.
Brenda Lord. Ed Eason. Graham Moore. And Edith Smith. And then separately we had obviously discussions with the Ashburton District Safety Advisory Committee. I've them taken as read and we'll go through them page by page. Page 21. Page 22. And that brings written submissions to an end. Okay, thank you for that. We'll now go to Jane to
Thank you, Mr.
enlighten
Chairman.
us.
Just some background with the situation in Methven, because I think it got a little bit confusing before. There is currently a 1 hour parking restriction on the main street of Methven, and that was put there because it was requested by the local businesses. They were finding that there were people parking there all day, particularly during the ski season, where they were leaving their cars there and then catching the bus up to the ski field. So the council reacted to that request and agreed to it and put that in. At the moment, that's the only time-restricted parking in Methven, but recently the SuperValue manager asked for time-restricted spaces outside of the SuperValue supermarket in Methven Mall. That created a bit of an issue because it is council owned. It's that's like one business perhaps trying to bags public parks that are available for everybody. So we did some consultation on that. We proposed that outside SuperValue we put 10 of the 15 angle parks, make that a 1 hour time restriction. That still left another 26 parks that are adjacent to the curb with no time restriction at all in the balance of Methven Mall. There was a really mixed bag came back in terms of the response. I think off the top of my head, I'm trying to remember, but I think there were 5 supported the status quo as in don't bring in any time restriction. 5 supported the restriction but wanted different times, and there were a couple that wanted both, which was a bit confusing. So we're going back to the Methven Community Board at their next meeting on the 12th of June with a report recommending that they make 5 of the 15 angle parks 30 minutes, and it's entirely up to the board what they would then like to recommend to council, because ultimately the decision sits with council, so it would be a recommendation back. But that was to try and come up with some sort of a compromise from that very mixed bag of submissions that we got. The idea was that way supermarket patrons could get a park when they need to go shopping, because sometimes you can't get a park there. And there are what the SuperValue person wanted was he would actually like the entire Methven Mall to be restricted because staff park there all day, but that didn't seem to be very fair and you create a problem on other streets. As for the main street that's got the 1 hour, there's plenty of adjacent side streets if somebody wants to go to have a spa or something else. There's ton of options where you can park if you want to be there longer than an hour. Yeah, I think that's probably about it. And I don't think there's ever been any intention that I've ever heard to install meters in Methven. It's just that, as Richard and Mark have pointed out in their summary, it's a bylaw that applies to the whole district. And if you're leaving that in there as a possibility for one day, then you would leave it in there for the whole district.
Councillor McMillan.
Can I just add to that in saying that when we talked about at the community board about consulting the businesses on whether we put parking restrictions on those 10 car parks, we did discuss in length about people who would be going to the hairdressers, who, I don't think we talked about massages, etc., but that we needed some parks that didn't have any time restrictions, so that would allow them to park there. So there was quite a decent discussion about it. We moved that with the Methven Community Board approved consultation, I think, and then there was a meeting called by the local businesses, which I think Calvin Holmes went, I know Megan Fitzgerald and maybe one or two others from the Methven Community Board attended, so that they could just have a chat about it all and to see what it meant for them.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll go to Richard to do his presentation to start deliberations off.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So our purpose now is to present a bit of a summary of the community feedback on the draft transportation and parking bylaw and some information to support your decision making on the final bylaw. And was looking at talking first of all about the proposed restrictions, which is the restrictions that are proposed to change in the consultation material. Then to look at proposals that have come forward from submitters for new restrictions. Thirdly, to look at other proposals that have come through that are not directly related to restrictions. And finally, talk about some wrap-up resolutions so that we can then go away and bring advice for formal adoption of the bylaw on the 28th of June. Safe to say that the questions that we asked told us that some people agreed with us, some people agreed with us on some things and not others, and some people disagreed with all of it. And a lot of people didn't have an opinion, which could be considered at one high level almost the community's feedback on local government at any issue at any point in the history of this country. So as insightful questions go that help you with decision making, these two were a bit of a fail really. But we did get some really good feedback in the submissions, which I am grateful for, because these two questions didn't contribute a lot. There were 12 maps on our website of changes to one-way restrictions, heavy vehicle restrictions, and in some cases we were adding restrictions, in some cases we were taking them off. And in terms of the restrictions shown on maps 1, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9 and 12, the submitters were either in support of those particular changes or they did not object to those particular changes. And as I was thinking about this presentation and this debate, I was thinking that there were a lot of points that come up and need to be addressed, so I was trying to get the easy ones out of the way quickly. So if you want to have a look at any of those maps, you'll have already seen this information amongst the material that's on Stella. But my first recommendation to you would be in regard to these ones which were to which no submitter has expressed opposition. My recommendation would be that you approve those changes.
Could we just quickly go through those maps, Mayor Brown?
Well, it is. I'd like to have a look at map number 3, please.
Okay. It's on page. It's in the map section.
It's on page 2. It's on page 2, and it's the no right turn out of Sale Yards Road at Timold, and it's one submitted. It's in. It's done. So why are we submitting on it? Is the cart before the horse? I don't know. And there's been a bit of toing and froing correspondence on the dump station there on how it doesn't work well because we've shut off the road heading out that way. The trucks have got to come the other way and they have trouble getting into it. And we agree that that is a problem. We've caused the problem perhaps by shutting that road off. Why are we shutting the road off, I suppose? Or should we be? Is it even our choice? It's the state highway. I'm just confused here now.
As I said, as a state highway, Wakatahi required the no right turn out there for safety reasons.
So why are we dealing with it here? If it's Wakatahi's decision, or did they ask for it and we implement it? I'm confused.
Mark, you'll need to correct me if I'm wrong. This is one of, I think, 2 restrictions where we were aware where the purpose of bringing the restriction into the bylaw was to catch up with what had been put in place on the ground. My understanding is that it was Wakakotahi's requirement that there be no right turn out of Sale Yards Road. I'm assuming it's going into our bylaw because it's turning off a local road that is restricted.
So why are we dealing with it? We're dealing with it because it's our decision, I assume. But someone else has made a decision already, hence my confusion. Because there's been no consultation on this, apart from right now. I'm seeking guidance.
As I said, it was a condition of the resource consent, so it's the council resource consent, but it was a condition that was imposed by Wakatahi. So that's why council was involved. But, there's other comments in there about it's already in place, so while we're consulting on it, and in hindsight, I guess that could have been made clearer in the document that we put together. Rich and I have discussed that. So, yeah, but it is if the restriction's there, like a one-way, that's acting a one-way and sign that way, and that's how it's operating, but not including the bylaw, so there's no enforcement going on. So it kind of makes sense to include in the bylaw, but it may have been possible to word it differently when we consulted on it to say why it's in there.
Councillor Cameron?
Well,
Oh, sorry, Mayor Brown, sorry.
No, you go.
I missed my name.
Okay. So if you can't turn right, and where's the dump station there, Neil? On the right. Yeah, where is it? So how are people going to get to the dump station?
That's their problem. Dump station's going to be
Did Wakakotahi consult us with regards to this, Ashburton District Council?
this before my time, and it was a discussion as part of the resource consent for the subdivision that's there in the Saleyards area.
That wasn't highlighted. I was here when we discussed the resource consent. Well, I was here when we discussed the subdivisions, and that's only a couple of years ago. Is that right, Neil? It was 2000.
I can't remember, yeah.
But I don't recall
How long
that.
ago? Yeah.
It's last time at council because we named
No.
the roads.
Yeah, we named the roads, but so I might not have been here. Because that would seem a ridiculous blooming situation, wouldn't it, really?
So it was last year.
And Neil, you go and I'll put my light.
Yeah.
But I think the Trucking Association has commented on how difficult it is to use that dump station for stock trucks because of the design of shutting that road off. And it seems to have been closed off without anyone's knowledge, or just Waka Katave just asked for it and it happened, part of a resource consent. Were others consulted as well? I don't know. It just doesn't seem right.
Yeah, look, we'll go and get more information on that and track that down, and figure out how it happened and what happened. Yep.
Cool.
Councillor Brown?
Yeah, maybe I can help here a wee bit. The plans came out from the developer, and State Highway 1 was always going to be like that. It was not a proper road, so it became a road when the developer did it. And they left, it was just a single track to be quite honest, and the dump station was there, and it is still there, but it is a mistake. That it should have been made different to go in and out for trucks.
Mayor Brown?
I don't think we change our roads just because a developer asked for it, do we? I think there's a process we're missing somewhere.
I don't think it was a proper road. It was just because it was the yards. Yeah.
So we're going to get
We'll
some
get
more
that information.
More information. I would make the comment that change to the main road is once every couple of weeks cars are trying to remove the barrier in the middle of the road, and it's currently it's been knocked off. It's terribly dangerous. Okay, move through the pictures. Number 4. Richard, you lead.
So this is Saleyards Road.
Mike?
Okay. So map 4 is you've got two things happening here. We've got the new roads, Saleyards Road and Drovers Road, that are I think essentially it's an industrial subdivision, so we're enabling those roads to be accessed by heavy trucks, and this is Graham's Road that goes out to Lake Hood, and so this is Graham's Road, this is Agnes Street, and what we're doing is we're allowing a heavy vehicle restriction in here, because when the tin rolled corridor works are done, heavy traffic will be expected to divert down McMurdo Road onto Agnes to the traffic lights at the intersection. So that's those two.
Okay, so we've been through all of the maps so it's 1, 3, 4, 6 to 9, is that those?
You want to look at 6 to 9?
What about map 5?
We were going to.
5 has got submissions on it, so we're going to deal with it next.
These are ones that we should be able to pass easier. Councillor Ellis?
Thank you. I think it's Hassel Street it's called. Is that already a designated heavy traffic? Because if trucks can't turn right to get back onto State Highway 1, where are they doing that from? How can they then access State Highway 1 to the north?
Yeah, it's already a heavy vehicle route. The ones that are shown are additional ones. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, again, in hindsight, having the maps with the existing routes on in a different colour would be useful.
So, yeah, it's safe to turn out of Hassel Street going right, but not out of the other one. Makes no sense.
Mayor Brown?
Map 6 at the JB Keller Drive, was it not a heavy road?
No.
Oh. Oh.
It was supposed to be super heavy roads all through the business park.
Wasn't designated though, obviously.
It's constructed as one, but it wasn't included in the bylaw, so that's why it's been added, yeah.
Number 7, 8, 9, and 12.
Yeah.
Good. Right, Richard, you move on with your presentation.
Yeah. So the next one refers to map 2, which is the mall at Methven, which we already had a fair bit of discussion about. We had a submission from Ashburton Citizens Association supporting the one-way restriction. We had a submission from Mr Markilly from Core HES noting that this restriction was already in place. And so in regard to the confirmation of the existing one-way restriction, the officer's recommendation would be to recommend that that be confirmed. There was also a submission from Ashburton Citizens Association also proposing that the speed limit in this area should be lower and that it might be developed as a pedestrian slash vehicle shared space along the lines of Burnett Street, Tankwood Street here in Ashburton. This is a new proposal, and the approach that we've taken generally with new proposals that have come through in the submissions is to suggest that if you see merit in them, that you refer them for an officer's investigation and report. As officers, we don't have an opinion on, I don't have an opinion on whether there is value in the proposal from the Ashburton Citizens Association. I guess my thoughts are that if the people of Methven want that, then they will find a way of telling us that they want it. So that's why a further investigation of that proposal is not recommended.
Thank you. Councillor McMillan?
Thank you. So when we're saying the mall being one way only, I'm guessing that means one way off State Highway 77, because it's obviously not one way the whole way through. Just to clarify that. And the lower speed limit through the mall has been mentioned, requested through the community board. It was also came up in the couple of years ago when we were talking about the speed limits. I thought it had come down to 20 k's, maybe I was wrong, it's still at 50 k's. So I don't think we need to worry about the shared pedestrian space, because there is some good decent footpaths down the mall, but I would like to see speed reduction brought up at some stage. But maybe that could come through the community board.
Thank you. Move on to feedback on map 5. Are we approving this?
Okay, so map 5 is a number of
process on.
Sorry,
changes to introduce.
sorry, Richard. Mr. Chairman, I don't. Did we resolve that issue in the mall? I don't. I don't know if we've. There was a couple of things said and a couple of sort of challenges, but it's. I don't know that we've got any clarity as to what council is looking to do.
So just with these red lines here saying obviously recommendation approve the confirmation of the existing one-way restriction, do you need a recommendation to say that, or?
Yeah, I think it's good practice.
Okay,
actually,
I'm happy to
give us
move the
certainty.
one-way restriction.
Okay. Councillor McMillan moves. We have a seconder. Councillor Hooper. Good. All those in favour say aye. Any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Next one.
We need to talk about the speed there, though.
Yep.
Yeah,
Councillor Hooper.
I support Councillor McMillan. 50k seems far too fast through there for me. I wouldn't even go that fast on my e-scooter. It goes 20k, stop it.
Yep. All right. All good.
We've got the speed management plan coming up for, so we've got the interim plan that's been certified and approved, but the speed management plan needs to include all these things. So it can be included in that discussion and that consultation, along with other things like speed limits on rural roads, what we're going to do over the next 10 years or something like that. So it can be part of that. There is an alternative process. If you've got a one-off site, you can get that certified outside of the speed management plan if we want to go that way for a site like that. But I would suggest that no matter what the speed limit is, the speeds will be the same with people going through there because it's one way, quite tight, lots of parking there. So the speeds won't change no matter what the speed limit is, pretty much.
Yep. Councillor Cameron.
I'm going to talk about Peter Street, so I'll wait till you get up in map 5.
Yep. Okay, we'll move to map 5. Councillor Cameron.
Thank you.
Have we got clarity on that second part of map 2 though? I just think to help the staff at the end of this process, we do need resolutions. We need to know what council wants to do, because otherwise we've just left with sort of potential consensus, but not particularly clear what it is you're wanting to do.
Yeah. Okay, Karen, can you go to Councillor McMillan?
Thank you. I move that the Methven Mall is included in the speed management plan. Investigation of speed, whenever that comes up.
Thank you. Is there a second to that motion? Yep. Councillor Cameron. Any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Now we'll go to map 5. Yep. Councillor Cameron.
We looked at, I think there's a submission from Newman's Tyres, and I also think from the Ashburton Citizens Association that would be useful if Peter Street was a heavy traffic route. Is it a heavy traffic route at the moment or is it not?
It is not.
Like I think in Newman's submission they said those big trucks, they're often servicing big trucks now and they can't turn around in their yard. So it would be quite good if it goes out to, so that people could drive right through there to Peter Street. And also listening to the Ashburton Citizens Association, I think their recommendation was Peter Street as well to save, was it Hablocks, to save, no, they have to go down Care Street, Will Street, yeah. What is the view of council? I mean, I'd support that. I don't know, I mean, I'm assuming Chalmers Ave and all those places are heavy traffic, so just not marked, is that right? Yeah. I mean, that seems to me a reasonable request, just down there so that the trucks can go, left and left. What's the view of the council on that? Would there be support for that?
Push a button.
Eh?
Push a button.
Oh.
Mayor Brown.
Yeah, I'd support that. Seems an anomaly that Peter Street's not, because heavy vehicles do use it quite often. But it needs to connect back into another heavy route as well, not be a dead end. So I don't know whether Cass Street is a heavy one or not. It doesn't say here.
I think it is. Isn't it?
But if Peter Street went down and Cass Street and then turned back onto Will Street, there's a connection there, which makes sense.
And you don't only go
Mainly use for heavy vehicles is going to Newman's and to Countdown, so they tend to go there and then go back again, because they do the deliveries and actually turn around in Newman's and things like that, so. Do we want to use Cass Street as a heavy vehicle route? So?
If they're delivering to Countdown, they're not going to go into the Newman's Road and Newman's Yard and turn around.
No, I'm not sure where they come round.
No,
they do go there, but in terms of...
They need to be able to go through and turn without having to back and turn and rip the road up as they do all that.
In terms of the bylaw, though, doing deliveries and carrying out normal business, they're permitted to do that whether it's a heavy vehicle route or not.
Okay. Yeah.
But don't have a problem with Peter Street being included from an operational point of view.
Councillor Brown.
I'm the same. I thought Peter Street was in, to be quite honest. And I would loop it from Will Street to Peter Street. Just have to loop.
Councillor Todd.
Yes, I agree. I think it should be Peter Street, Cass Street, and then Will Street. All we're doing is probably making legal what's already happening anyway, to be fair.
Councillor Ellis.
Thank you. But you would stop Peter Street at William Street. You wouldn't just say Peter Street in general, because it carries on right through to Chalmers Ave, and there's probably no need for them to use that bit.
Mr. Chairman, it would be really helpful if someone moved something, because I'm not sure if we're doing Peters, Cass and down Wills, Peters through to Williams, Peters on its own.
I would like
I'm not
to
sure what we're
move,
doing.
please, that Peter Street becomes a heavy traffic route. Now, if I'm correct, if I look at the map, we've got the New World, the Countdown there. So I reckon if we go Cass, left Peters, main road. Does everybody agree with that, or do you think it should be further up? I think that's that block. Yeah, because there's no need for them to, whiz up to Cox Street or anything, is there? No. So hang it. So you go through left onto, yeah.
So could you make a motion that was sort of quite clear, say from Will Street, Cass Street corner to Peter Street, Cass Street corner, and then back to State Highway 1?
Excellent motion.
East Street, sorry.
Okay, so
To East Street.
East Street. So we're going Cass Street and Cass Street to Peter Street, and then Peter Street to East Street.
Yes, thank you for that. So
Is that okay?
is there a second to that? Yep. Oh. Councillor Lovett, any more discussion on that?
Max.
So we're all very clear before we vote on that what we're saying. So we're saying the corner of Will Street, Cass Street, to Peter Street, Cass Street, and then to East Street, Peter Street. So it's a L shape around the corner. Okay. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Councillor Cameron.
I have another question. We're going to be selling this building and other buildings. Are you allowed temporary heavy traffic sort of access when you're doing temporary work? How does that work? You are. You apply to the council for temporary heavy traffic access. Well, if there's, cranes coming in to put this on the back of a truck or something.
Yeah. And so it's carrying out business that, it's not using as a route, just like road construction, that heavy vehicles use it as well when you're doing sealing work or curb and channel work and things like that. So it's part of carrying out that business rather than as a route, which is what you're trying to deter people driving along those urban streets all the time. So
We may carry on, please, Mr. Chair.
Yes. Yep.
We have Park Street here, just that little corner down there by Commode Street to Moore Street. See that little thing? So does that mean the rest of Park Street is not heavy traffic? Is that correct? A lot of schools around there and things.
I understand that's correct.
That's correct, thank you. And I always, one more comment, then I've got nothing else to say. I always imagined Moore Street was heavy traffic. I was told many years ago Moore Street was heavy traffic.
Just the roads shown on here are the additional to the existing one. So just as part of this, we want to map these routes so it's actually clearer to see rather than written down on the schedule. So we will produce maps that, if Richard agrees with us, to show what the existing routes were and the additional ones are, so they're all seen on one map, maybe in two different colours, so you can see where the changes are and things like that. It just make it far easier to see, make the decision and agree to it as part of the next stage of the process. Yeah.
Thank you. We'll get Richard to bring the next slide up.
We've addressed the the question of Peter Street, which is, you'll see I was recommending be referred to officers for report. There were no, there was one submitter who opposed the proposal on map 5 because they felt it directed heavy traffic towards the second bridge via Chalmers Avenue. Chalmers Avenue is a heavy traffic route. It was deliberately intended to direct traffic towards Chalmers Avenue, and that was the case with the bylaw before the second bridge was as close to becoming a reality as it is now. So don't understand the views of the submitter, don't agree with the views of the submitter, recommend that the proposals on map 5 be approved.
Any discussion on that? No. Okay, we'll move to the next one, map 10.
So this is Tarbottoms Road, and this is a deletion from Schedule D2, and Schedule D2 allows overnight travel and overnight parking on this road, and Schedule D1 enables this to be used as a heavy traffic route. And what we've been doing with the bylaw is if we want a road to be able to park on, we include it in Schedule D2, and if it's a route during the day, then we leave it in Schedule D1. That strikes me as a little bit of an inconsistency. However, that's the purpose, and it seems that the reason that we're now seeking to stop the parking of heavy traffic has to do with the increasing development in this area, which is, you can see it quite well from the aerial photography. The views of submitters were almost diametrically opposed. Ashburton Citizens Association not only supported this proposal, they wanted to see it extended across all urban areas, and Te Ara Aotearoa Transporting New Zealand opposed the proposal. Their preference would be that it be allowed across all urban areas. Officer's view is that we recommend you approve the proposal. Not every urban road is going to be suitable for parking by heavy vehicles. At the same time, there does seem to be a need to meet the parking needs of the activity. I noted Mark's comment earlier about talking with transport operators about engine braking, maybe talking with them about overnight parking and the extent to which that's an issue for their members would be a useful place to take this conversation.
Any comments around Tarbottoms Road? Nope. Councillor Ellis.
Thank you. Tarbottoms Road now, even since this photo was taken, there's all those empty sections you can see in the bottom left corner now have all got houses on them. I think there's, it's a very busy urban road now, so parking trucks there doesn't seem to make any sense to me.
Councillor Brown.
Same.
Yep. Is someone move it? Yep. Then Councillor Ellis, seconder. Councillor Brown. Any more discussion? All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Okay. Map 11. Yep. Councillor Ellis, McMillan, sorry.
Thank you. What seems from the feedback that this question was a little bit confusing. Is that correct? So, Rob Markelly supports proposal believing it will stop heavy vehicles travelling on these roads. And then Ara Aotearoa opposes proposal believing it will stop heavy vehicles travelling on these roads. So they're basically saying the opposite of what the question was. So I just said that before. I thought that it was restricting heavy vehicles on Barker's Road and Forest Drive, which is the same as Ara Aotearoa, and possibly the same as Rob McKillie.
Yeah, I had a phone call during the consultation period from another transport operator who seemed confused, and he explained to me what he saw when he looked at the map, and as a person who produced all the material with the support of other officers, I agreed with him. It was confusing. And it's actually only when you look at the map alongside the Register of Resolutions that it become clear what the intention was. So yeah, we have people supporting the proposal for the wrong reason, and we have people opposing the proposal for the same reason, because they have a different view. And I am glad nobody asked the Ashburton Citizens Association why they supported the proposal, because they might have misunderstood it too. So travel on those roads is permitted under Schedule D1, and so this was these two roads were in D2 to enable overnight parking. But like Tarbotton's Road, these roads are becoming the subject of more residential development. It's going to keep increasing. It's going to become increasingly inappropriate for overnight parking on those roads, and that is why the proposal was to remove these roads from Schedule D2 so that there could not be overnight parking on these roads. It almost takes longer to explain what we wanted than it does to explain what the recommendation is. But
yeah. Okay, that makes total sense to me, but I'm glad I wasn't the only one that was confused, so that's good. And I'm happy to move that recommendation if no one else has any
Councillor
questions.
Lovett, if you got some sound that one.
I'll second it, but I'll just want to make a point here again, is we're, like all these roads in towns now are becoming more and more, becoming part of more housing, and we've got lots of people who own trucks and vehicles, and because of their start-up morning and night are disturbing the neighbours, where do they park? And this is where I come back. Maybe it's time as a council we start looking at this issue of maybe paid parking for bigger vehicles, so we're not having them parking in the streets all the time, because these guys are just going to move somewhere else to be a nuisance. It's going to become a problem. But yeah.
So we have a motion, and do you second the motion? Yep. Discussion on the motion. So I just want to clarify. So we're saying that you can't park there, but you can still drive up as a heavy vehicle. Is that right? Yes. Yep. So it's just parking we're stopping. Okay, that's a good point of clarification. Any other discussion? Put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you.
Okay. We received no opposing views on various aspects of the bylaw that were designed to make it easier to use, such as the use of plain English, a shorter bylaw table of contents, etc., etc. I'm relaxed about whether we get a motion on this particular one, because you'll deal with it when you adopt the bylaw on the 28th as a document as a whole. New proposals from submitters. Ara Aotearoa Transporting New Zealand believes that heavy vehicles should have access to the road network as of right. And so effectively what they're asking or inviting you to do is to reverse the existing premise upon which our bylaw's been established, which is that we start from the point of view that heavy vehicles are banned unless they're expressly permitted. So there are a number of options. We could investigate this, we could refer it to the next review of the bylaw, we could approve and consult on this proposal. None of those options are recommended. I think that if you were interested in pursuing this idea in the future, it would certainly become a consultation issue, because something like 80% of our roads do not have any heavy traffic permission attached to them. So there's another potentially 80% of existing complainants about heavy traffic to be discovered. All the light sleepers in Ashburton District will love you. Try to be a bit more professional. Our recommendation on this one is no further action, but there are other options for you to consider there too.
Any discussion on that one? Oh, no recommendation, we move on, can't we?
Yeah.
Do we need to? Yeah, okay, yeah, so I'll move a recommendation. Can someone like to move? Councillor Brown? Yep, Councillor Allison put forward, Councillor Brown seconded. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Next page, restricted proposals from submitters.
There was the proposal from the Ashburton Citizens Association that the ban on trucks and trailers parking overnight should be district-wide. We're not recommending any further action, but I do think it's worthwhile having a dialogue with the transport operators, particularly around the issue that Councillor Lovett has spoken to. There were submissions saying that we should keep all heavy trucks out of the CBD. Now, I think this is particularly referring to the CBD as bounded by East Street, Cass Street, Moore Street and Havelock. We're not recommending any further action on this, partly because there are times when heavy trucks need to access the CBD to make deliveries, and also because with the physical changes that were made to the CBD, it is discouraging heavy trucks from entering there in any case. So we're not recommending any further action on that. And the third proposal from submitters on this slide came from the discussion at the District Road Safety Coordinating Committee that it was important that we continue to include state highways within the bylaw, partly because we've got parking restrictions on the state highway in Methven and in Ashburton, and if we want to implement those, then we should not take the reference to state highways from the bylaw. So officers agree with that. Happy to answer any questions on those three recommendations.
Any questions? Councillor Todd?
Mr Chairman, just by definition, what is a heavy vehicle? Like where's the... There's obviously light vehicles, heavy vehicles, and maybe bigger heavy, I don't know.
Yeah.
What's the...
I think a heavy vehicle is anything over 3 tonnes. Then they have what they call high performance HPMVs, and they are much bigger.
The definition was if there's heavier vehicles than heavy vehicles, are they banned from the...
Oh, the heavy vehicle, by definition, HPMVs are also heavy because they're well over 3 tonne. Okay. There are, well, it's a bit more than 3 tonnes. It's 3.5. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. Any more discussion on those three? So can we get perhaps a joint, Councillor McMillan?
I'll move both of those, or all of them, yeah, all three.
Three?
Yep.
Yep. Second to that? Yep, second that. Councillor Todd, any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you.
Now we're getting into specific restrictions proposed by submitters, and I've got 5 on this slide. One is to extend the Park Street restriction from Tancred Street west to Kermody Street. we're not recommending that one because it already is proposed to go to Community Street. The second relates to Peter Street, and we've dealt with that.
Do we take one at a time, perhaps, Richard, as we go through? So the first one, extend the proposed route of Park Street from Tankard Street. Any discussion on that one? A map? Map 5. Where is Park Street?
Where are we?
It's the little gap. It's the little gap.
So it's in here, isn't it?
No, he's on the other side. He's on the other side of the state highway. Mr. Chairman, if you go to map 5, and you'll see Park Street has an orange line at the middle left. It's the little piece between Tankard and joining up to that line, as I would read the.
But haven't we just agreed to that, or is it?
No, it's the gap. So if you look at map 5,
Yeah.
it's the not orange bit
Oh,
between Tankard and Moore.
Street
Correct.
and Tank.
Correct.
Oh, well, I suppose that makes, otherwise they're just going to.
But the officers are recommending it doesn't be done. I'm just trying to highlight the piece. I'm not trying to prosecute that it's a good idea. Yeah.
The officers are recommending it isn't changed.
Correct. So now you need to consider that.
But how does heavy traffic get there to the corner of Moore Street and and whatever that one is, Park Street? How does heavy traffic turn up there before it goes down the road?
Can we talk to Mark? Mark could answer that.
The section that's included is from Moore Street to get to the warehouse and those industrial there, rather than going across the state highway. So it's for one section and not the other.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is there's no orange line.
But it's already.
Oh, it's already.
It's already.
Oh, you have to be a mind reader. Got ya.
It's you mentioned earlier. I think having maps that show the existing and the proposed ones when we next deliberate this will be very useful.
Yeah, well, it's already there. I agree.
Okay. So.
But can I just absolutely Mr. Chairman, without trying to hold everybody up, as I read the Richard's slide, it's extend the proposed route of Park Street from Tankard to Commode. So I don't, is that already, it's not the bit of Moore Street, it's Park Street from Tankard to Commode. Is that what we all understand we're talking about?
Yeah.
I just heard Moore Street before, and I thought it was then someone said Moore Street to the state highway. Well, that's a different bit of road.
So everybody's clear, we're not going to extend that piece. That's what we're saying, is that we're not going to do it. So it's not.
No, that's why I think there's confusion, because I think the bit that already is the state highway to Park Street, i.e. Moore Street, but the bit of Park Street isn't. Is it? That's what that. Well, anyway, I think I'm confused. So
is that
likely
the
at least one other person.
Is the supermarket between Tankard Street and Burnett Street? Is that the supermarket there with the service lane? Is it? No, the supermarket is Moore Street and Tankard Street.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so the trucks can go around the block, can't they? Yeah, I'm with you, Richard.
So the truck.
Delivery's exempt.
It's about a route. It's not about deliveries.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm just trying to see.
Moore Street is already a route. That's what I heard Mark say. This proposal on Richard's thing is that little piece of Park Street.
Councillor Lovett?
Can I ask, when the trucks are parking, is it on Tankard Street at the back of the supermarket? They're facing towards Park Street, aren't they? So they've actually got to go on that road regardless, which is not to come back out onto Moore Street intersection. So why aren't we just joining that little piece up?
Can I take the thinking just up a level of abstraction for a minute? When I talked with Mark about the submissions, what I said to Mark was, I think if we get proposals for new restrictions, then what we'll generally do is we'd recommend to council that if they see some merit in the idea, that they simply ask the officers to investigate, and then we can bring back the information you need on that at the time, and so you'll get a map that shows the existing as well as the new restrictions and things like that. That was my thinking on an efficient way to get through this work today. We had a good resolution on Peter Street. It was a little bit untidy as discussions go, but you got there and you got there reasonably efficiently. And if you want to work through all of these examples where I've got recommend, investigate alongside and make some decisions today, then that's absolutely fine. It's your right and privilege to do so. But if I was a fan of efficient governance, I'll be kicking these towards Mark and ask him to bring back reports.
Yes. Could I seek clarification on two matters, Mr. Chairman, following what Richard said? Firstly, the one we're talking about recommends no further action. So that wouldn't be subject to a further report, and it will mean this won't happen because nothing. So if there's a view that something needs to happen, then we do need to somehow move it from no further action. And just while we think about that, if we're going to have a series of further investigations, which may well be the right thing to do, I'm not querying that per se, but does that mean then that we can't adopt this bylaw? Because we're going to have so many amendments, edits, tweaks and further work that it would say to me that we haven't completed our work on the bylaw. Is that a problem? Is that what's intended? How does calling for, look, and it must be 12
So the answer is no.
We don't.
Because one of the things that the bylaw does is that it clarifies that council can make changes without having to fully review the bylaw every time they want to make a change. So they can add to the maps, add to the schedules as they were, the maps as they will be, simply by resolution.
So, okay. So in reality, it doesn't matter what we put in now, we can take things out, amend or add by resolution in the future.
Indeed. I wouldn't have said it doesn't matter what we decide now. Of course it matters what we decide now. But it doesn't preclude us making decisions on some of these new matters in the future.
Okay.
Councillor Hooper?
Thank you. Can we possibly save you some time and say the designated drop-off space close to Kelly's Bar to prevent double parking doesn't need to be investigated? Because where does that stop?
If there are some that have got recommend, investigate alongside and you say, no, we're not interested in that investigation, we think that's a really bad idea, then we won't investigate. It is worthwhile you telling us that.
Would it not be good once we've, since we've had submitters put on this one, to just for us to say we'll just deal with it because we can? That's sort of almost poor form in that they've taken the effort and time to put a submission, and we should be dealing with it at the time as part of this process, I would have thought. So that, because if I was submitted and I saw it and we just put it off and did it when we felt like it, it's not, this is, they've put them in this process, so we need to deal with it in this process, I would have thought.
Well, you get a choice. You know, if the will of council is that that is a waste of time, then you can do that. But the counter view is that you should do something with it because it was a submitted idea.
So we have five on the first page, and four of them are investigated and one is take no further action. Do we want to deal with the no further action one and get the other four brought back with maps and some light discussion, some discussion around them, or do we want to
point by point? Yeah, point by point.
One at a time. Okay. Mayor Brown.
Just carry on off.
Councillor Brown.
Well, you can take one out, Kelly's Bar. He can walk.
Okay, we'll do one at a time.
Yeah,
Okay, right, we'll start at the top then. Easiest start at the top.
Okay, start from the top.
Start at the top, Councillor Brown.
I think I'd like to see it as an investigation, or we say yes.
Which one? On the top one?
That's the top one. We start from the top. Park Street and
A
Taylor
little
Street.
piece of Park Street.
That small part. Yeah, get it done, because that is the truck. The truck's going past it anyway.
Okay, so is that a...
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's fine, but would it be worthwhile explaining why officers are saying doing nothing? Because this one wasn't even an investigate. Is that because it already is?
No, it's recommended no further action.
Yeah. Yeah.
So do we know why we recommended that?
Well, can I ask the question then? Why no further action?
Okay, so Councillor Brown's asked the question, no further action on that one. Can we have a response from the officers, perhaps?
I'm not sure whether I even asked Mark this question. I thought that because we had the restriction from Moore to Kermody Street, that this was already dealt with. But what the discussion has shown is that there's a length of Park Street from Moore Street to Tancred Street West that we don't have a restriction, and we're being asked for one. So this maybe should be in the investigate pile. So I may have. The reason for investigating is just sometimes you don't know what you don't know.
Okay.
It's about us trying to give you good professional advice. If you're confident with what you making a decision based on what you know now, then that's totally your prerogative.
Councillor Brown, you have the...
I'm getting confused. So, Mark, what's the reason of doing it? Or why do we have to? Why no action? If the other part is done, and looking what the businesses are on Kermode Street, you've got all new shops, car parks, you've got the warehouse, you've got industrial stuff. Why are we not putting it straight through? Because trucks will use it. Or is it another option?
I don't think I have a reason why we should or shouldn't, but looking at it, it makes sense to have Park Street from Havelock Street, Tancred Street to Moore Street through to Commode Street. If you look on map 5,
yeah,
we've got Havelock and Tancred going up to Park Street, so Park Street, but without looking at the schedule, I didn't see whether Park Street's included or not, and I'm assuming it's not.
I don't think it is.
So if that's the route that if we're approving those other 2 or 3, we should have that section of Park Street as well.
Okay, so let's do it then.
If it was to come to me to come back to you, that's probably what I'd include on there, just looking at the map.
Okay. So then I would say yes, do it, please.
Sorry, what was that like? Councillor Brown?
Extend Park Street to Kermode Street.
Would it be helpful if we had these come back with the map of what's actually on there now, because that's perhaps part of the confusion. We're looking at it in isolation of actually where it stands at the moment.
I know what you're saying.
Which would alleviate all of these problems, the whole lot, if we came back with make the first one investigate, and then all the other investigations, if we could come back with them drawn on the map, we can look where trucks go and can't go, and it'll be abundantly clear very quickly.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, and if it goes from Havelock through, I think we're right behind you there.
Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, and Richard's right, we don't know what we don't know, because there may be some high risk, preschool, Park Street Day Centre used to be in that area, so just with that quick overview of investigate will tell us if there's any high risk operations that we are leaving ourselves open for.
Okay, so
it will be a 30-kilometre speed limit because it's in the school zone there. So.
Yep. Councillor Hooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate what you're saying, but with respect to Brenda, should we say no need to investigate the drop-off to Kelly's Bar?
Yes. Yep, okay, is that a motion?
That's a motion.
A second of that? Councillor Brown.
we've gone to the Kelly's one now.
We're going to the Kelly's one now, yep.
Right,
Okay, we've gone to Kelly's one, yep. Sorry about the confusion. So we have a motion on the table that says we don't investigate Kelly's bar drop-off space. No further action on that one. We have a motion and a seconder. Any discussion? All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Hoops and no. And now we'll go to the other 4. And if we could have a motion that we... we've done, sorry, okay, Peter Street's been covered off on the previous one, so just number 1, 3 and 5. 1, 3 and 5. Councillor Hooper?
Oh, sorry, I left on, but I thought you were going to say that as a part, they were all going to be investigated and then the map was going to come back with the colour coding. So I'd like to move that motion.
Yep,
Thank you.
seconder of that. Councillor McMillan. Any further discussion? All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Carried. Do we want to stop now or do we keep going through? I think we'll stop for an afternoon tea. That's hard work. I'd like to welcome everybody back, and we'll go back to start on page number 18, which is up on the board.
Yep. So the first point was we had some submissions asking what assurances council might give about more proactive enforcement, which kind of inspires the question, does council want to look at a change in service level? This was particularly raised in regard to footpath parking, and some people have raised it in regard to seeing heavy vehicles in the CBD. We're not recommending a change towards more proactive enforcement. It could well be that there might be something we could do in the communication space to perhaps promoting the use of Snap, See and Solve for some issues, and also pointing out to people that heavy vehicles can be in some of these areas if they're doing deliveries, it's still allowed. So a little bit of public information and communication around this question might be helpful, but officers aren't recommending, and nor have we budgeted for any significant change in service level.
Mayor Brown?
If a resident sends in a Snap, See and Solve photograph of a car parked on a footpath, can you take action off that photo?
Rick, you got that one?
Thank you. Through the chair, yes, we can follow up on that. As I mentioned earlier, it is an issue district-wide, and there are a number of issues being looked into on that.
So without increasing the parking wardens, you could do it through via that app more cheaply, economically?
Yes, we could.
Thank you.
I think it's yes to a degree. If we got dozens, hundreds, thousands of Snaps and Solves of people parking, there would still need to be resource thought as to how we would then process those Snaps and Solves. Yeah.
Okay, so the first one, someone want to put a motion that we take no further action on it?
I'm happy with that.
Seconder? Councillor Todd? Any further discussion? All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Move on to the second one.
The second one was there were a number of submitters who asked council to do something about engine braking, and it was particularly in the context of Methven. Attached to the submission book, I think, was some information from Waka Kotahi around engine braking. And did Mark mention that this was the subject of a three-way conversation with Waka Kotahi and transport operators, or was that a different issue?
It's included on the agenda for their next meeting with the Roading Industry and Trucking Association, so it'll be brought up then, and I've been asked to go along as well. So,
Councillor Cameron?
Thank you. Will the officer then feed back to council, or we'll get that feedback and then we can discuss it again? Is that how that will work?
yeah, I'll feedback what the discussion at the meeting is from the Trucking Association and other members, and just see what their feedback is. And hopefully it'll be, yes, we'll talk to our drivers and not use engine brakes when we're coming into Ashburton and Methven would be great.
Yeah, which I'm sure the drivers, they just need reminding not to use them.
I think so, on a regular basis, yeah.
That's right. So if we had a discussion and we felt that reminding on a regular basis involves signs, we can revisit that decision.
Correct.
Councillor McMillan?
Thank you. And I had an email about engine braking in Methven, which is why I sort of recommended that they put a submission in to this, because I thought it might tie in. But will the officers go back to those submitters, again, similar to the question I asked this morning, and give them an update on why we're not doing anything about it in this, but it will come up in meetings?
We can provide those particular submitters with a targeted response on this issue.
Thank you, I'd appreciate that.
Councillor Lovett?
I'm just going to say it's not only Methven, it's Ashburton as well. But I was just wondering, so it doesn't get forgotten about. Can we put it on the agenda to have it reported back in like 3 months' time to see if this has worked or not? Just talking to the transport operators, and if it's not, we go further and get them to put signs up, so it doesn't get forgotten in that.
Well, I think through you, Mr. Chairman, I mean, the short answer is yes, sort of. You know, we'll follow the process. We'll have the meeting. We'll see what the reaction was. And at some point in the future, we'll presumably see whether or not that's worked and whether more communication with that group is needed or whether there is a different solution. I don't think in 3 months would be recommending we jump straight to signs. We want to go through the process that we're underway with first. But I think the key thing is for council to remain up to date with how that process is unfolding.
It does, because you don't want it to drop off and then have to wait till this is redone again and then bring it up in a few years' time.
Thank you, Councillor Lovett. So do we need a motion on that, or is it comfortable with process?
A motion always helps.
Okay.
But this is the action that we're currently taking from the previous work that council had done. So in this case, it's less important, but a motion never hurts.
Okay. Councillor Hooper?
I'll move it.
Okay. What are you moving?
That there's no action recommended.
Yep. A seconder for that? Councillor Ellis? Any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Time restrictions and metered parking.
One of the submitters on this was Dame Linda Top, and we heard her earlier this afternoon talking about this. Officers just note that time restricted parking is part of our management regime to help ensure parking turnover. There is currently no metered parking in this district, so the officers weren't recommending any change to the bylaw to remove either time restricted, certainly time restricted parking, nor are we recommending that metered parking be introduced, but we did want to keep those provisions there to give flexibility to a future council to respond in a timely way.
Across to Jane.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just a little thing for when staff write back to the submitters. We do just have the meter at Eastfields, so we have got one car park that is metered.
We do? Where's that?
Eastfields, pay and display. Yep.
Councillor McMillan?
I was just going to recommend that we don't pursue anything.
Okay.
If we need to.
It's a motion, is it?
Just one point, Mr. Chairman. What I heard Dame Linda say, as well as her opposition to meters, which I think is covered by the points just discussed, was that she felt there were some time restrictions in Methven that were too short. How does that matter get considered and resolved? Is that for this bylaw, or is it a separate piece of work? Is that a report that needs writing? How do we give effect to that?
Well, Councillor Todd, do you want to discuss that?
No, we're just looking for an answer to that question, either Richard or Jane.
Yeah, you just asked me.
Process-wise, if you wanted to consider changing the duration of a time restriction, you would bring a report to council. We don't have our time restrictions, our parking restrictions in a schedule to the bylaw anymore. Our bylaw says that the parking restrictions are where the signposts say they are, and that's always per a council resolution from some earlier time.
So I guess just to really close that loop, is council looking for an officer report on the time limit restrictions in Methven?
Well, the community board are doing it for the mall, but with the main street, I've had no complaints ever. That's the first time I've heard one, and the 1 hour is what the shopkeepers asked us for in the first place.
Councillor Todd?
Mr. Chairman, I suppose to be fair, I'm being consistent, probably uncomfortable with the reference to metered parking. If it stays in there, then it's easier to be introduced at some time in the future. I believe that if sometime in the future council wanted to go to metered parking, then that should be put out to public consultation once again to see if it's acceptable.
Mayor Brown?
I think we need to leave it in because we do have metered parking in the district, which is the Eastfields. So if you took it out, then that would have to go as well, I would imagine. Yeah, it's a tool, it's a lever, but council will decide whether they go it or not.
This was specifically aimed at the Methven area. Would it be worth referring something to the Methven Community Board to come back with a recommendation to us on Methven parking? Is that doable? Because
I think they're currently looking at the mall, is what I heard Jane say, and that other than today's presentation, up till now we've heard people are generally happy with the main street at P60, but you've had the submission today that you obviously need to think about and factor in compared to previous communication that you've had. But at the moment, the community board is looking at the mall, not the main street, as I understand it.
Councillor Lovett?
I was just going to ask, could the community board just widen their scope a little bit and actually canvass some of those businesses that do beauty therapy and stuff and get their feelings and report back, and then you've actually covered the whole thing and it's updated.
Len, that's what we've just done with the Methven Mall, and there is a beauty place there, and we're talking about, if the board adopts it, having 5 parks with a restriction to 30 minutes and 36 parks remaining with no time restriction. So I'm really not sure what it would achieve. I would have thought if the businesses there were unhappy, they would have approached the board already. That's what the super value chap has done. But there hasn't been any feedback from the businesses at all.
So the hours parking she was talking about, is that the rest of the mall? Or is it down the main street?
The main street of
Methven.
And there's plenty of places you can park just off the main street where there's no time restriction at all.
Right.
Councillor McMillan?
And to be fair, the 60-minute parks along the main street that have been there for years were asked for by the local businesses, and they've gone through the community board and asked for those, but that would be a good, I don't know, 6-7 years ago that some of those were put in, and yeah, I just think that we don't. I think the community board have got this covered along with Jane's team. I don't think we need to do any more. But that.
So could we get a motion that we accept that nothing is not recommended to change time restrictions and metered parking, as per the paragraph 3? Yep. Okay. Well, Councillor, could you? What are you moving, Councillor McMillan? That clarity.
Yeah, that it's just not recommended to look at time restricted and metered parking.
Yep. Thank you. Second up.
Because aren't we looking at doing 5 time restricted car parks right now?
Yes, I think perhaps the resolution will be other than the work currently underway by the Methven Community Board. Yep.
Okay. Thank you. A seconder for that. Councillor Ellis. In discussion, all those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. And the last one. Richard.
The last one was a submission from Ashburton Citizens Association, where they felt that the provision in the road traffic rules that prevents parking on footpaths should be introduced into our bylaw. I'm not sure, but it's good practice to simply restate regulations in a local bylaw. We enforce this under the road traffic rules, and we don't recommend it be duplicated in the fashion proposed.
Councillor Cameron.
Yeah, I'll support the recommendation.
Okay, move it then. Move it, second it. Moved by Councillor Cameron, second by Councillor Ellis. In discussion, all those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Other submissions various.
The submission from Ashburton Citizens Association also referred to the footpath parking guidelines that were developed in Wellington. And while we agree that footpath parking isn't a problem in some areas, we're not convinced that this is necessarily the solution. And our recommendation would be to encourage people to report through Snap, Send, Solve and other methods for normal enforcement.
Councillor Hooper.
Thank you. I just got a question on this one. The truck that Donna mentioned on Wakanui Road that had parked near water meter or something caused damage. Has that been resolved? That it sounded like that was continually happening.
Through you, Mr Chair, if it's heavy traffic, the roading team would have dealt with it, but we couldn't answer off the top of our heads whether that particular one has been addressed or not. I wasn't aware of it until today.
No, and I think it was damage to a water meter as well, so we have to follow up on that as well. The comment I make about footpaths, they look the same as a pavement where vehicles go, but they're just not built to take it. So that's a reason why we never want any vehicles on footpaths. But for a lot of people, they just look exactly the same as what they're driving their vehicles on, so that's why a lot of people do it.
She made it sound like there wasn't a whole lot of resolution to some snaps that she had sent, so can we comment on that?
We can follow up on the CRMs. It'll be recorded, so we'll follow up on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a motion to move this one forward? Councillor Ellis?
Yeah, happy to do so, but once again, some comms around this too, just letting people know that I think Snap, Send, Solve's been around a long time now, maybe needs a little refresh of people's minds. Yeah, so it's a good tool.
It is a really good tool. We reinforce it from time to time. Perhaps this conversation reinforces the fact that we need to do a little more again. It is certainly a really good tool.
Councillor Hooper?
Yeah, I was just going to agree with Hamish, and yeah, maybe push it a bit wider and say it's not just for potholes, it's for a variety of situations where you need some resolution.
Could I take that you second that motion? And
yes, Mr Chairman.
Forward. Any further discussion? All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. And clarify the relationship between walking and...
Yep, Richard. This was, again, a submission from the Ashburton Citizens Association. I looked into the points they were making and I came to the conclusion that I agreed with Donna. It needs a few words here and there just to so that the reader of the bylaw can understand exactly what is covered by the bylaw and what's addressed through the walking and cycling strategy. You don't want the detailed explanation, trust me.
Councillor Todd?
Sorry.
Thank you. Seconder? Councillor Lovett. Any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Keep e-scooters out of Ashburton CBD.
It's the law. They're allowed there. And it was interesting at the Road Safety Committee because certain e-scooters require a high, there's a 300 watt limit beyond which I think they're required to have a helmet and some other things. And the police say it's almost unenforceable to identify whether it's a 300 watt scooter or a 200 watt scooter or a 50 watt scooter. So I think we need to leave this one alone. The law is not helping us here.
Mayor Brown?
Just did I hear before that e-scooters are not supposed to be on cycle lanes?
They're not supposed to be on designated cycle lanes.
I thought that would be the place they probably should be.
It's always been my experience that the law that comes out of Wellington is perfect in every respect, so I couldn't possibly criticise it.
I like your sarcasm.
And I think the confusion, Mr Chairman, is that not all cycleways in the Ashburton district are designated cycleways. So you might see an e-scooter on what looks like a cycleway, and that might be perfectly legal.
Councillor Lovett.
I was just going to say, I nearly got bowled over coming out of the hairdresser's door a week ago by an e-scooter down on Kerr Street, and I sort of, and the ones in the shop were saying, why weren't they on the cycle lane? So obviously there's a bit of education needs to be going on, because they're really tracking right down by the doors of the shops. And, you know, there's an accident waiting to happen there. They're just dangerous.
Councillor Hooper.
As a law-abiding e-scooterer, where are our designated, and how do I distinguish a designated cycling lane?
Mr Chairman, I think that's a really good question. How does an e-scooter, or in fact a pedestrian, know where they are and where they aren't? And perhaps that's some work that we need to do to provide clarity for councillors and indeed the community, what is a designated cycle lane and what isn't. Yep.
Okay, so do we have a motion to...
So moved.
Councillor Hooper? Oh, Councillor Todd, sorry. Yep. And what's the motion? That we're not banning them? Yep, okay. Seconder, Councillor Hooper? Yes. Any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. And the next one, Councillor Practice.
Yeah, this was, I think again it was a Citizens Association, and they had some questions about anonymous submissions. An anonymous submission is someone who submits typically through the web portal, and they don't provide any contact details at all. Our practice has been just to number them anonymous 1, 2, 3, 4, and enable council to consider them simply on the basis that it's better for council to hear every voice than to disqualify some people because they wish to remain anonymous. We're not recommending any change to that practice. We think on the whole the benefits outweigh any disadvantages. If you wanted to explore a change of approach, officers could give you some advice on that.
Councillor McMillan?
I agree. I think we need to hear from everyone, and if they don't want to put their name, then so be it.
Councillor Hooper?
I'd like to move no change.
Thank you. Seconder, Councillor McMillan. Any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you.
The first 1, 2, 3, number, the typo in clause 14.1, they're all literally corrections and typos. We should just do them. I have to thank Donna Fable for her attention to detail. She's a fabulous proofreader, and it's really hard because I've worked on that document for months through various versions, and after you build in a document that time you just don't see these things anymore. So I'm really grateful to Donna for her attention to detail. There were some other suggestions. The word metered should be removed from clause 6.5. Otherwise it creates a nonsense. There was a suggestion that section 10 should be retitled, and that we should rewrite the bylaw to include our over 80s parking permits under the bylaw. At the moment we're simply applying the over 80s parking policy as an administrative action to enforce the policy. We haven't put it into the bylaw. We're not convinced that it's necessary, but it wouldn't be a ditch or a hill I would choose to die on if you did want it to go into the bylaw. Didn't see a need to rename clause 14. In fact, the suggestion I'd oppose because the first sort of 14.1 to 14.5 would be inappropriate to rename as suggested, but we could rename a subclause above 14.6 to refer to e-cycles and scooters. That would make good sense. I'd recommend that.
Thank you.
So we'll write in the detail now.
Can anybody, if anybody's got objections to any of the 8, could they just come forward with them now? Councillor Todd?
I'll move the acceptance of those 8.
Thank you. Councillor Lovett,
And I'll
seconded.
second it.
Any discussion? All those in favour, say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you.
And the 2 wrap-up resolutions. One is a resolution directing officers to make amendments to the bylaw consistent with the decisions made today and present the bylaw for formal adoption on the 28th of June. And the second is that council officers investigate the proposals as directed by council.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Richard, do you think, given the way this deliberation has unfolded via a series of resolutions,
probably don't need the second one?
We certainly don't need that second one, perhaps, and the third one will catch any other agreements that haven't found their way into a resolution. So perhaps just the first one. Yeah, thank you.
Can we have looking for a resolution on the first point there? Councillor Ellis?
Happy to so move.
Seconder? Councillor Hooper? Any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you.
So next step will be on the 28th of June when council adopts the final bylaw, and then we can start work on the solid waste management and minimisation bylaw. One door opens, one door closes, another door opens.
Thank you for
about 6 financial policies to review as well, PLTP. So
thanks everybody for attention today. Thank you, Richard, for your presentation. I declare the meeting closed.